LEGO is one of the world's biggest toy companies, but despite that, they have seemingly become incredibly out of touch with the surrounding world around them, and most importantly as well, their audiences. And if you've heard of or seen any of LEGO's latest releases over the last couple of months, you'll know exactly what I'm sort of hinting at with this, as LEGO has increasingly got bigger and bigger and therefore as well more expensive, on top of them having to increase costs, which their reasoning was due to inflation. In 2020, people's spending habits changed completely drastically. A lot of people were stuck at home and just looking for something to do, so a lot of people turned to new hobbies, which was much to LEGO's benefit, as a lot of people turned to the toy brand as it got people away from their screens, away from Netflix and binge watching the same shows over and over again, and got people building and brought families together. It even got to the point where the product was just acting as an escape for people to just distract themselves and calm down. It was very therapeutic, very calm, and a lot of people bought into the hobby. And interestingly enough as well, at that same time, LEGO had started to branch out more into the adult market, releasing an entire range of 18+ adult sets. A lot of sets were rebranded to just have plain black box arts, and it worked in their favor. Especially considering what was going on in the world at the time, it was the perfect combination for LEGO to have such amazing success. However, that amount of success and continued growth, there's no way that that's going to continue forever, and in fact, it started to slow down this year, especially now that that sort of era is over. People are going back to work, people are going back to traveling, people are spending money on dinners out and lunches and weddings and birthday parties and events. People are starting to spend their money in other areas and cut back on their LEGO spending. And on top of that, LEGO's product ranges have had a major shift over the last year as well. Now, it's one thing for people to cut back their LEGO spending to go and spend money on travel, but it's an entirely different thing as well when LEGO continually creates these really giant, large sets that often price a lot of people out of buying them. With the sets that LEGO have been making, there seems to be a trend that they are trying to attract people who are just going to buy that one-off set and drop a lot of money all at once. But for many years, people have considered LEGO to be a very expensive and luxury and premium toy, and often, at least, the quality has reflected that. However, LEGO has seemingly been trying to cut corners as well, and increasing their prices in a time where there is a cost of living crisis is just incredibly tone deaf. Now, it's also really important to keep in mind that there usually is a turnaround time of between 1 to 2 years from a set being thought about to actually being produced. So a lot of these sets have been in production for a year or so, and the timing that they are coming out, especially back to back, feels incredibly tone deaf, and on LEGO's part is incredibly unfortunate. And I even question like why a lot of these things haven't been held off just to slow down the release schedule a bit in response to what is going on globally. Putting people's individual spending habits aside, there is major changes going on in the global economic market. Currently, the British pound has completely crashed and is almost 1-for-1 with the US dollar. The US dollar is also incredibly strong, which is affecting a lot of other countries' trades. And because the US dollar, in fact, is so strong as well, a lot of other countries are reacting by having to increase prices because of how much more it's costing them to buy and trade in US dollars. There's also soaring interest rates happening right now, with mortgage rates hitting around 8.5% in some countries. It is chaotic, and people are really having to pull back and be a lot more thoughtful about what they're spending. So when LEGO continues to release a range of incredibly expensive sets, and a lot of the times are missing out on things that fans have really been asking for. Now, if you're a major LEGO fan, I'm sure you've heard the news right now that LEGO is producing a $550 Marvel Hulkbuster based upon Age of Ultron. And this set, when I first saw it, it disappointed me. Mainly, it just felt too big. Who was asking for a $550 giant Hulkbuster? But not only that, the Hulkbuster is something that they have made before, still at a larger scale than a playset, and that set only cost $120 at the time of release. Adjusted for inflation, that should be around $160, I assume. And that set as well was based on the exact same mark of Hulkbuster, and they increased the size just exponentially, and overall it feels incredibly lackluster. Now, I have not seen the set in person. I have not built the set, and quite frankly, I don't want to buy it or build it at any point in time. However, from the couple of reviews and pictures that I have seen, most notably from MiniSuperHeroesToday, he noted that there are a ton of design gaps throughout the entire model, most notably on the torso. And this, at that price point, just feels incredibly weak. Now, LEGO has put out some amazing works of art and some amazing designed models, but the higher up these price points get, the closer they need to be to perfection, and it is a lot easier to pick and pull mistakes because of that premium price point that they are charging. And at $550 to have those gaps and to have a really lackluster minifigure and to have a lot of weird design proportions in the actual model, it really feels like they are just making things bigger for the sake of being bigger and more expensive. Especially because at that scale, they seem to get very, very comparable to the Hot Toys and Sideshow models, which are scale collectible action figures which are incredibly hyper detailed and realistic, and often those would cost around $200 or $300 and you don't have to build them. Their proportions are spot on and they just look amazing straight out of the box, and there's none of these weird design gaps or anything like that. And I get that a large point of LEGO is the build process. I love the build process. However, at this price range, LEGO is targeting just collectors in general, and a lot of things that these collectors may not care about is that build process. They just want something to look really cool and really accurate to put on display, and a Hot Toys is going to give you a much better result than that Hulkbuster will. But that wasn't the only fumble from Marvel this year. There was also the Black Panther bust, which again, this just felt very tone deaf to what audiences were asking for. A lot of fans really wanted to see a Black Panther bust sort of helmet in the scale of the original Iron Man helmet, as well as the helmet lines from Star Wars. Now, the designer did come out and say that the proportions didn't quite work for that. However, scaling it up to be, I'd say, about 4 times the size just does not feel like it was the right decision. The set overall is giant. The bust overall, the design looks great, but the hands really bring the set down. They stick out far too far and add a lot of extra cost, making a lot of people just turn a blind eye to that set. Now, neither of these two Marvel sets was something that fans wanted. Honestly, I think one of the best sets this year that people have had the biggest reaction to has been the Sanctum Sanctorum. That has been a set that fans have been asking for ages. It was at a price point as well that was reasonable. It didn't feel too high, and while it was on the more expensive end of things, and a couple of years ago would be one of the most expensive LEGO sets that LEGO would have put out, it still felt achievable for people to buy into this set. The set overall had a fantastic build experience. It was great for what it was. The only lackluster part was the minifigure department, but it's a lot more forgivable because it was at a lower price point. It is 10 years of LEGO Marvel Superheroes this year, and there was not one sort of special anniversary commemoration, despite many other themes doing that before. A lot of people as well, after the success of the Daily Bugle, wanted to see an Avengers Tower model, and I feel like that at a $550 price point will be a lot easier for fans to swallow, as it's something that they haven't done before, firstly, but also something that they wanted. And again, at a time where people are being very selective with how they spend their money, they're not going to go and drop it on a set that has a lot of flaws and is something that they just did not care about in the first place. Now, while LEGO Marvel, I think, has been the worst culprit in this section, it doesn't just stop there, as Harry Potter had the giant collector's edition Hogwarts Express, which unfortunately the set just did not feel complete. However, because it was Harry Potter, I feel like it was a bit more bearable for people to sort of turn a blind eye to some of the issues and buy into it, myself included with that one. The station felt incomplete. The custom built track and the fact that it wasn't motorized was a major turn off as well for a lot of people, but the biggest thing for me was not including an epilogue Ron and Hermione, when that was really, I feel like, the perfect and probably one of the only times that they could have been included, in favor of 2 other random students. Yeah, it's just not great. And again, this set had a very premium price point of $500. However, I think the major difference between the Hogwarts Express and the Hulkbuster in terms of, I guess, just overall success is that a lot more people are more familiar and probably want a Hogwarts Express to put on display rather than a giant Hulkbuster, especially when there is already a larger one that existed and, in my eyes at least, looked better. Whereas with the Hogwarts Express, you've only really got play sets, and even then I think for a lot of people you should just go with that rather than the collector's version because of how ridiculously high that price point is and how it really doesn't feel like it fulfilled that quota of a price. And now let's turn our attention to the 100-year set. There was the Galaxy Explorer, which was a fantastic deal at $100, and I really feel like was the perfect price point, the perfect set, and the perfect celebration of classic space. And then we also have the Lion Knight's Castle. Now, don't get me wrong, I want the Lion Knight's Castle really, really badly. I think it's a fantastic looking set. I love the idea of classic castle. It's beautiful. It's a luxurious model. It's really well built, but it's just a very high price point for someone like me who is into a lot of different types of Lego to really buy in. And there have been a lot of talk about Lego store employees saying that this set is not selling well, which is such an unfortunate thing to hear because it is amazing. And I think a lot of that, again, comes down to that high price point. It's a very tall order of an entry point in order to get people to buy this set, and it really just turns a lot of people off. I would love to own that set one day, but just at that price point, I've really got to prioritize my money with the themes and things that I love most. However, with the rising cost of Lego and the increasing amount of really expensive sets, I know for myself personally, I am being a lot more strict with myself, and I'm not really branching out into as many themes as I probably would have 2 years ago, because the entry point is a lot higher, and also just because everything else in general is a lot more expensive, I don't really want to go out and spend even more money on things just because I think that set is cool. And if that's how I feel as a young 23-year-old, I can't even imagine how that must be for families. If you had 2 kids, the cost of Lego City right now is insane because of the road plates. People aren't really a big fan of them from what I've seen. I mean, I don't know how kids respond to them, but they take up a giant chunk of a set's budget, and everything just feels incredibly expensive and inflated. Even the cost of pick-a-brick these days is insane. For all of the new pieces, it feels like they have just slapped a giant premium on there. I'm a really big fan of the new corn piece. In fact, I wanted to order a ton of them when they got on Pick-a-Brick. However, I logged in and I checked it out, and it was going to cost me $7 Australian for one piece of corn. And just for reference, a CMF in Australia costs $6, including tax, and that is a fully detailed, decked out minifigure that often inflates a lot in value afterwards, or I can pay more and have one corn piece. Now, naturally, the price of Lego probably was going to creep up at some point just because of fuel prices. However, with Lego's increased amount of profit that they continue to report, and when they're going and investing money in things like the metaverse, it just really does not feel like these price hikes are entirely justified. Also, with what's going on in Europe, with the pound and the US dollar and all of that right now, I do have a feeling that prices are going to increase even more as a result. And these increased price hikes, as well as the increased amount of expensive sets, are turning away a lot of casual fans that only just got into it. They're tapping out after 2 years. Many people as well are starting to sell their collections over the last 2 years just because they cannot continue at that rate. They have to be more frugal in order to just survive with the cost of living, as well as just if they want to engage in any other additional hobbies or activities or just things that they love. I've personally thought for a while that Lego really needs to slow down with their monthly releases. With every single month having a giant, really big, expensive set, it is way too much for people, even just for casual fans, let alone the hardcore fans. It's just too much stuff. There is a lot of stuff available. There are so many sets as well that are just sitting on shelves, and that is proven as well just by the amount of prices that Lego has had to cut on their own retail sites recently. Now, that's not to say you can't have a super big, amazing Lego set. The Millennium Falcon is one that I really want to get one day, and even at that ridiculous price point, plan on saving up and splurging on. However, there's rumors of a giant Eiffel Tower coming out next month, and with the Hulkbuster and the Titanic and the Colosseum and the Lighthouse and the Lion Knight's Castle and the Hogwarts Express, it is getting a lot to stomach. And I hope that Lego doesn't just read into the sales figures and really reads into the customer feedback of these recent releases over the last couple of months, because I really feel like we could probably hopefully start to see some changes within a year or two as they really respond to this, and hopefully, ideally, start to make some smaller sets again for adults. With all of the sets recently, one thing that I have said quite often is bigger does not always mean better. There are a lot of amazing smaller sets, even like the largest sets back in 2011, 12, and 13. They were incredible. I mean, look at Helm's Deep from Lord of the Rings, or the Tower of Orthanc, or the Black Pearl. All of these sets were large at the time of release, and even looking back, they are amazing. If they were going to remake the Black Pearl, it doesn't need to be a giant, massive thing. That scale was great for that set. The only set I feel like this year that has come out at an incredibly high price point and being a very large set that has worked has honestly been the Razor Crest. I was able to see it in person and that set felt justified. It's still very expensive and I think that's going to turn a lot of people away just because it's too out of reach for them, but at least that set felt like it was okay to be at that price point. It worked, it felt natural, it felt like it was justified as well because the model looked incredible. It was a work of art, it was a masterpiece. There were very minimal flaws, I guess, outside of like the minifigure department for the most part, and it really felt justified and like something that people could save up for and try and buy. But in my opinion, if LEGO continues to go down this road of making incredibly expensive sets just because they can, I feel like a lot of people are going to pull back. It's incredibly frustrating to see this direction that LEGO is going in. I mean, the foosball table was another one that completely shocked me. Just the price of that set is insane and it blocks off a lot of people as well from getting really diverse and really interesting new face prints and things like that. But I'd be really interested to know your thoughts on LEGO's recent trends in terms of their pricing and their set strategies and their set sizes and even just, I guess, your spending habits in general. Honestly, for me, I'm starting to turn towards more retired sets because it feels like that price, again, even though it is incredibly inflated, feels more justified than the prices of the newer things that are coming out. But the biggest thing for me is that I found myself not branching out into other themes anymore. I really have just been sticking to Harry Potter and Star Wars. I have barely touched Marvel this year just because those sets have been a major letdown to me. That has been the biggest thing for me, so let me know what has changed in your life in terms of your spending habits as a result of both the, I guess, global economy as well as LEGO's tactics. This is the topic that I love discussing and love learning about, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give me a big thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel down below, and if you're like me, keep an eye out for a lot of LEGO deals. I feel like day to Christmas you're gonna find some really good deals on things because I'm just not paying full price for stuff anymore. It's ridiculous. But until next time, guys, I'll see you later.